from a tools perspective and technology seat that I sit in, historically, all of the systems were built around what was really easy to capture and report, right? Assets, accounts, performance, demographic field, something that could easily fit into a box and be presented on a report. And now it's really changing in time.
I can't wait to introduce you to Knowing Me, Knowing You, the Know Me podcast where the future of financial advice starts with discovery. We're bringing you candid conversations with top industry leaders, innovators, and behavioral finance experts, exploring how wealth managers can deepen client relationships, personalize advice at scale, and drive real business growth. Because clients don't just want financial plans, they want to feel understood. They want to be known. Stay tuned, subscribe, and get ready to transform the way you connect with clients. Know Me, transforming discovery into growth. Hi, and today we are joined by Erica Rodrigues and Morgan Bell from Constellation Wealth Capital, a firm taking a long-term minority investment approach with independent RIAs. Erica is a member of the Strategic Advisory Group, helping partner firms think through what growth really requires, whether that means building a marketing function, clarifying ideal client profiles, refining budgets, or finding new ways to grow beyond traditional referrals. Before Constellation, Erica ran events and experiential marketing for the markets and wealth services businesses at BNY Mellon. She built and executed strategies that drove brand visibility, deepened advisor and client relationships, and supported business development through thought leadership, experiential marketing, and industry partnerships. Morgan is also a member of the Strategic Advisory Group, helping optimize technology for efficiency and growth. With her results driven consultative approach and deep knowledge of the wealth and fintech industries, she supports firms in aligning their technology strategy and selected systems to enhance both advisor and client experiences. Before Constellation, Morgan led technology consulting at BNY Mellon Pershing, worked with RIAs and broker dealers, and began her career in financial planning. She is a CFP professional with deep interest in behavioral finance. Together, Erica and Morgan sit at the intersection of two of the biggest questions in wealth management today: how firms grow and how technology helps or gets in the way. Erica, Morgan, this is our very first threesome Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast. Welcome to being the very first initiators of this trifecta of podcast thought leadership on the future of wealth. I'm excited that you're here on the podcast.
Thank you.
So, Erica and Morgan, I would love to start with the question we start with everyone on this podcast. What excites you about the moment that we're in right now about the future of wealth management?
So I'll take this one, or I'll start it off. What's exciting me right now is the growth is finally becoming intentional at firms and wealth management. I think for years, most firms grew through proximity and referrals that showed up almost by accident. Work, good work was, good work, and we were getting referrals and we were growing in that way. But that isn't a strategy, and you can't scale and you can't repeat it. What's changing now is that firms have the tools and the frameworks to actually understand who their best clients are, why they're coming to them, and how to find more of them on purpose, which is great. It's the shift from growth that happens to you to growth you design. And that's really exciting to watch our industry evolve and mature in that way.
I love that.
Morgan?
That's awesome. And for me, and Erica hit on it a little bit, what I find most exciting, especially from a tech perspective, and we'll talk more about my role, is that the tools to support that human work are finally catching up, right? And so for a long time, the technology was something that advisors had that just helped them survive and not something they could really truly leverage. And so that same wave of capability with technology and AI that's reshaping every other industry that we're seeing is now showing up in wealth management. And so for us specifically in wealth management, it isn't displacing the human, right? It's just making the human more present. And so that advisor that wants to spend more time with clients and less time on admin is finally getting that chance. And I think that's a really exciting moment to be in.
Fantastic. Tell us a little bit about Constellation and how the two of you work with partner firms. So, Erica on the organic growth side, Morgan on the tech side. How do those actually come together in practice?
Yeah. Constellation is a private equity firm, and we make minority investments in RIA firms and independent wealth management firms. We have 15 partner firms to date, and they range in size from about 2 billion to almost 100 billion. And both Erica and I sit on the strategic advisory team, and that team comes in alongside the capital to help our partner firms both set and achieve strategic growth goals. And so for me specifically, I spend most of my time working with our partner firms on technology, a lot of which in today's day and age is on AI. And so while Erica's asking, what does growth look like? I'm asking, how is a partner firm's technology stack really supporting this growth? And for us specifically, where can we lean in to help? So sometimes that's a technology audit, sometimes that's setting a multi year roadmap. Sometimes it's just making connections across our partner firms. But the honest answer of how those come together and what that looks like in practice is that it's actually really the same thread. And so the firms growing well don't necessarily have a growth strategy and a technology strategy. They have one strategy and they're reviewing all decisions through that lens, right? And so Erica and I often will have the same observations or the same opportunities identified when we're working with our firms. But obviously, from a growth lens and a technology lens, we bring different tools to support each of those engagements.
Yeah. And I'd build on that because Morgan's right. It is one thread. And, the place we see it most clearly is in the client, to be honest. My starting questions are always around demand. Who is the firm serving? Where do their best relationships actually come from? What makes the client want to refer them? This is all really the foundation to good marketing. So that's the first place we really need to start. Um, but the moment we answer those, very difficult questions sometimes is where Morgan's World comes into play. And, if you have referrals you can't track or an ideal client you can't consistently deliver for, it's not really a growth strategy. And so it's not really going to take you to the places you need to go. So I'll specifically work with our partner firms to identify who they're trying to reach and why those clients actually choose them. And in Morgan's world, she's making sure that the firms can capture it, support it, and scale it. And usually, we're looking at the same opportunity from two ends of the same hallway and meeting somewhere in the middle.
Super interesting. I heard that you work with a lot of different types and sizes of partner firms from 2 billion up to over 100, you said, and they're all pursuing different ambitious growth goals. What have you learned as you work with all of those different firms about how they can successfully achieve organic growth?
So I would say that the biggest sort of lesson I've learned is that there's no single playbook, but there are some common ingredients, and the right mix depends on this firm's stage and their resources that they put behind it and of course, the clients that they are built to serve. While growth looks different across all of our partner firms, when it comes to organic growth, three things really stand out to me. I think first is that they are picking a lane, having clear positioning around what specific client or niche almost always outperforms a more generic, you know, the comprehensive wealth management message that you see often and across wealth management businesses. And it's not because it's not true. These firms are comprehensive. It's that the details is what makes the firm memorable and referable. And then second, they are uh, building repeatable growth engines rather than chasing one-off wins. Referrals, for example, are wonderful, but referrals plus a system around that really makes growth, super powered, supercharged. And then the third is that growth is owned by leadership, not handed off to a single rainmaker or marketer. The firm that's treating growth as everyone's job, including advisors, is moving faster and often more successful.
That makes a lot of sense. So, again, you've got a big range of a lot of different types of organizations. How should they be looking differently at growth strategies depending on their size, their maturity, and their target client?
This is a great question because I think I take it from I look at this through the lens of a marketing maturity. This is, very focus area for me. Where a firm actually sits on the curve matters more, less about its size and AUM, and more about sort of where they are in that maturity journey. For a smaller, newer, independent firm, the work usually is foundational, getting clear about the ideal client, building the story worth referring, developing a real marketing infrastructure that often doesn't exist. And that's the part that gets missed. Marketing can't be left to the, one person in the organization that has extra bandwidth. It has to be built deliberately. And even if it's small and starts small, like one or two things done consistently will always be and outperform, many things done halfway. And I think that's a lesson we all learned when we were children. So, um, and then for a larger, more established firm, the challenges are different, but the questions are actually kind of similar. Does the marketing team have the right level of resources? Do you have the right specialties on the team, or are we asking journalists to cover too much? Are we spending in the right places or that are actually generating returns? And, important, do we have a way to measure that? Because if we don't, then it's all kind of for nothing. And most importantly, I think, is that marketing and organic growth is being treated as a function that has a real seat at the table and is able to make decisions and is part of a strategic conversation, not a service desk, not taking orders. And, after the decisions have already been made, they're tasked with being part of that strategic conversation. It sort of becomes less about whether to invest in growth and more about whether their investment is structured, resourced, and empowered to deliver.
Amazing. So, one of the things that we see across a lot of our customers is they struggle with advisor adoption. So, how do you work with advisors to embrace new tools, new technologies, processes, behaviors, especially related to engagement and discovery?
I'm going to take this one because we see it quite a bit from a tech perspective, and it's something we talk about quite often, right? You can have the absolute best strategy, the best technology or tool, the best process, but if advisors don't adopt it, that's money wasted. And so, although the best for each of those categories will be highly dependent on the firm, what's most important is that the advisors are actually using it. And so, oftentimes, it's also the one that's underinvested in. And so people think, oh, we've bought the new shiny object and we're going to just give it to advisors or give access to the whole team, but they don't teach people how to use it or how to train on it. And so, first and foremost, how I think about this and how I often have conversations with our partner firms around this is, how are you communicating it to the advisors, and how are you really making sure through this process that you're communicating that it's going to make their lives better? So how you frame the rollout matters. If you say, hey, this is going to help leadership track what you're doing, that's going to land very differently with an advisor than if you frame it as, hey, this new tool is going to give you 2 hours back every Friday afternoon. That alone can significantly change the pace of adoption, right? Who doesn't want 2 hours back as opposed to being tracked? And so when we think about it, specifically related to your question around client engagement and discovery, it's, how can firms make discovery a firm capability, right? Can you build that into the process? Can you build that into client reviews? Can you build that into the way that meeting notes are being captured? So, giving advisors a way to work within a process designed for them and their clients can really help drive adoption within a firm. And then the second thing that I think is really important that sometimes gets overlooked is involving the right stakeholders in the design, right? So, what we don't want to see is advisors being left out of the conversation of this tool that could save them 2 hours on a Friday afternoon. We want to see them having a seat at the table. If this is going to change how operations does their job, we want to see some of the people deep in the weeds of operations having a seat at those table, not just leadership top down decisions being made and handed to advisors or operations or whomever is going to be using the tool at the end of the day. Not only will that help with buy in, but it will also help create those internal champions, which at the end of the day, from the seat that we sit in or the seat that I sit in, I think matters far more than the actual IT rollout plan.
What if financial planning wasn't just about numbers, but about you, your values, your goals, your vision for the future? Nomi is transforming client discovery for wealth managers, going beyond assets and risk scores to uncover what truly matters. With behavioral insights and real time data, Nomi helps advisors personalize advice, build deeper connections, and grow their businesses. Because the best financial decisions start with knowing you. Discover the future of client engagement at Nomi.com. I love that you talked about integrating discovery. And as you guys are familiar at Nomi, we are very big believers in deeper client discovery as the foundation for stronger relationships. And I wonder how you see the industry evolving beyond demographics and assets and toward a deeper understanding of what is driving those clients, their values, their motivations, and their life goals.
And I'm gonna say that I'm really interested in the work that you're doing because I honestly see that discovery is becoming a real growth advantage and not just a relationship nicety anymore. For a long time, I think the industry competed mostly on the performance and price, and both of those things are getting harder to differentiate on today. And I think it's something that you generally cannot commoditize and understand your client, their values, what worries them, what they're trying to build, who they actually are. When a client feels known at that level, I think they don't leave and they're the ones that are referring you. And that work is really important. So discovery work that used to sit in that like soft skills bucket is becoming to me one of the most practical growth levers a firm has today. And firms that get good at understanding the whole person at the end of the day are the most durable and referable businesses. And I think we all kind of are starting to see that. And we are at a point in the maturity and development of our industry where there's these tools that exist today that are helping advisors get to know their clients a lot better than they did before. And I know this was, shout out to your Mark Diversion podcast. I thought it was wonderful, but it was something that he really talked about, and like technology becoming not just something that helps serve the advisor, but something that really helps enhance the client's life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that.
And
And did you want to add, Morgan?
I just had one thing to add, and I think from a tools perspective and technology seat that I sit in, historically, all of the systems were built around what was really easy to capture and report, right? Assets, accounts, performance, demographic field, something that could easily fit into a box and be presented on a report. And now it's really changing in time, right? Those tools like Nomi are surfacing values, motivations, life context, information that advisors weren't historically capturing. And so now technology is sitting in a place, and from the point that you made of the behavioral finance background, that I think it's really interesting because it's that intersection now where technology can actually support some of that deeper discovery work. And so I think the firms that are going to be unrecognizable in 5 years are the ones who know their clients deeply and have created a way or tracked a way to capture that information. And technology is now the enabler of having those conversations.
Yeah, we certainly we when we talk to the market, we often say a lot of tools out there help advisors sell. And the future will be determined by how do you help an advisor solve? And in order to solve, you need to know much, much more about the problem and the context and the individual so that you're speaking their language. You're solving in the way that they can hear exactly what it is that you're connecting to, and they can recognize that they feel understood. They feel heard. They can build trust in that fact. And so I do think we're at a moment in time where we're moving from selling to solving as an industry. Erica, how about you? Where do you see in 5 years the what capabilities will distinguish the winners?
Yeah, I think very similar. First, I think the ones that are thriving are treating growth as a discipline and not something that's an afterthought. And I think that we're getting there, and we're getting there pretty fast. They know exactly who they're serving, and they've built their story around. They've just their discovery process, their referral engine, all around that clarity. And then the biggest piece, and I think it ties to what you were just saying, the biggest piece that I'd like to emphasize is that next generation of clients. There's, as we all know, tremendous amount of wealth about to change hands, and the next generation of clients often want something a little different than their parents. They communicate differently, expect a different experience. They care about being understood, not just managed. So I think more and more we're at that pivot point now, and we need to be thinking, how can I understand my client, the next generation of clients, better than I did their parents, perhaps.
Yeah. We see that a lot. We see the next generation desiring more asynchronous engagement. They definitely have a very high bar for value, and their attention will go where they believe it's warranted, where they believe it's deserving. And so I appreciate you calling that out. We always end the podcast asking everyone, and I would like to ask both of you, if you don't mind, what is an instance in your life or a conversation that you've had that has totally changed your personal relationship with money?
Erica, you want me to start?
Yeah, go for it.
Our trifecta. I'll start.
Yeah.
Um, so I started my career as an advisor, actually. And so a little bit of a different seat than I sit in with technology consulting today. And so early in my career, we had a prospect come in. I was sharing this story with Erica in preparation for this podcast, who had just been diagnosed with terminal cancer. And the conversation, no surprise, probably wasn't about portfolios or returns, right? It was about how what he wanted the time that he had left to be for and what legacy he hoped to leave behind. So we didn't show any performance reports. We didn't go through any of his accounts balances, but he told us that it was one of the most valuable conversations that he had had, and one that he wished he had started decades earlier. And I think that was what was really hard to hear, right? Because that's when I realized that the real work in this industry isn't about the money or the dollar signs or the performance returns in the way that we usually talk about it, and those things that have historically been the ones that we were tracking. It's so much more so about the people and what they want to do with the money that they've saved and built their whole lives around, and how they can use that to actually live the lives they want in time, not not the ones that they wish they'd lived when their time is almost up. And so that's the version of this industry that I hope to spend my career building and helping people uncover.
That's great. That's a fantastic story. How about you, Erica?
Yeah. So for me, I don't think it was a single moment. I grew up in a immigrant household, and so my parents were born and raised in Portugal during years of fascist government. So they grew up pretty much their entire uh, childhood, adulthood, kind of into adulthood under a fascist government. So they grew up with real hardships, food insecurity, low wages, starting to work very young just to help support the rest of their family. And so these stories were part of my dinner table conversations all the time, right? It was my family's origin story. And so we money was always part of what we talked about, and the values that came with that, the importance of studying and working hard and saving. That was part of my DNA as long as I can remember. And honestly, I think they still are. I notice myself still with that instinct that nothing is guaranteed, that you work and you save because you don't take security for granted. And what shifted for me, I think, over the years is seeing the other side of it. To be honest, like, my parents didn't save out of fear. They saved because they wanted to give me better choices than they had. And, that's been part of, like, what drives me all the time. And that's the part I carry with me. And for them, money was never the point. It was like a means to give the next generation a different starting point. And, I think that that's, taking it back to the work that we do, the work that Morgan and I do, it resonates because at the end of the day, here, helping people grow and protect what they've built is really about the same things my parents were after, giving the people they love more choices and having a little bit more security than they started with. And so it's definitely ingrained in me. And, I think taking it back to understanding that story for me is important. And I expect my advisor to know that, right? Because that's what's important to me and that's what's built you know, m my sort of journey, and I think it's really important.
I love it. Thank you. Both of you shared that your relationships with money are rooted in your emotions, in your context, in your personal exposures, experiences. Whether for neither of you was it your personal trauma, but it certainly had a huge impact on your relationship with money, just kind of being around it, seeing it. And so I'm so grateful that you joined us. What I'm taking away from our conversation is that growth and technology are not separate conversations, they're not separate initiatives. A firm's ability to grow depends on its ability to know who it's serving, and I would add who it wants to serve, and create the right experience, support advisors, get their buy in. Thank you for that, Morgan, with the right tools, and build relationships that go deeper than a traditional referral model. And I'd also add scale more. We hear a lot from advisors that referrals are great, but they only go so far. And at the end of the day, it is outsourcing your sales to your clients. And so, how do you kind of do more better? The future RIAs won't win by adopting every new tool or chasing every growth tactic. They will win by being more clear about who they serve, how they create value, and how technology supports more human, more personal advice to help them live better lives. So I'm really grateful for our conversation, which very much evidenced all of these types of themes in the work that you're doing. Tell us a little bit about where listeners can learn more about your work at Constellation Wealth Capital. We have a lot of advisors, we have some investors, we have some fintech people. That's who you're talking to. Where can they go to learn
Sure.
more?
Constellationwealthcapital.com is a great place to start. And of course, follow us on LinkedIn, Constellation Wealth Capital. We're, constantly, posting and having conversations on that platform as well.
Thank you very, very much. And anything else you guys want to add before we wrap up our podcast for today?
Thank you so much for having us, Marla. This was fun.
This is very
It has
fun. Thank you so much.
been been a joy on my side. And for our listeners, we want to understand how your firm is thinking about organic growth, how you're looking to go beyond referrals. Is the opportunity better marketing, better technology, better discovery? Or are you going to listen to the advice given to you on this podcast and recognize those are not three separate things? You need to weave them all together to get the outputs that you are looking for. Please, if you found this podcast insightful, share it, rate it, comment on it. And we would love to hear everything you have to say about the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast. Thank you again, Erica and Morgan. It's been really a joy. Very successful first time trifecta podcast.
Amazing. So
Thanks,
glad.
Marla.
Thanks for having us.